Shalom, Rastafari, Assalamu alaikum, peace to the kings and the queens and the earth. How's everybody doing on this Wednesday? I want to give a big shout out to everyone that's been listening and supporting. I appreciate y'all. And I'm going to get right into it. Today is Indigenous Day. And here in Canada, it should be nationally recognized. This thing should be a federal holiday. But we have not got there yet with that consciousness as far as solidarity and saluting and appreciating our native cousins. So let me get into it. What does Indigenous Day mean to me? And what does it mean overall? First of all, I think that anyone who's followed me for a while knows that I have a big Indigenous passion. I'm always banging Mohawk flags in my music videos or talking about my Indigenous people and collaborating. I've done tracks with guys like JOC. I've done shows with city natives and countless activity on territory. And I like to keep it positive right now. Those things that I've done were from the heart. As a young person living and raised in Buffalo, New York, the indigenous and natives, we were blind to that too, right? We were constantly overshadowed by European history and European fake culture, so to speak. And of course, when we would go to the education of the indigenous, all we knew about was the Navajo, the Cherokee, and yeah, they were there. They were good people, like literally hiding their history. I remember being in school in Williamsville South High School in Buffalo and not ever knowing about anything about the Iroquois Confederacy. Let that sink in. Like, they didn't even teach us the original people of that land, the original people who battled, fought, and lived there, not migrated, not came over and took over, who were from that area, upstate New York, western New York, all through New York State, all up into Canada. One of the biggest confederacies and native coalitions, so to speak, because it was multiple tribes. One of the fiercest too. We never knew shit about them. As a matter of fact, this is how fucked up things are. I'm gonna get a little like bold with my language, because my indigenous, I know they love this. We didn't even know. We used to play Iroquois high school and never knew anything about Iroquois. Let me put that in perspective, right? And so when it comes down to this is kind of a, the spirits and the ancestors are talking. I think they know that the unity is happening and needs to happen with the native cousin and the Black American. It's kind of ironic that, well, not ironic, but it's kind of, amazing that Juneteenth was 2 days ago. And then today is the Indigenous Day. Now it's not, I don't think it's recognized in North, but it should be in the States, and it should be a federal holiday. And, Juneteenth, they made it a federal holiday, so people were able to get, some people with government office will get that day off. I'm sorry. Indigenous Day should be the same thing. Absolutely. So we didn't learn about that. We didn't learn about the education, and it was just, again, completely so ignorant. Like, of course, Thanksgiving, you have these people walking around with a fake crown and feathered bullshit, completely ignorant. And I remember going to Buff State, my first real Rada that I knew who was native, a man, Josh Hostetler. He was from Salamanca. He went to Salamanca High School. Salamanca's right by the territories. So you have a lot of natives that go to that school. He was Mohawk. All right, shout out to my man Josh. I don't know if you ever listened to that man. He's one of my best friends. He played linebacker. He was a freshman when I was a freshman. We had the whole crew. Shout out to my boys. If anybody's listening to Buff State, shout out to my boys, man. It was all of us freshman year, but it was me, Black Nick Warren, Black Jeff Russell White, and then Mike Potter was white. But then we had Josh Hostetler, who was native, and he had a very those crystal blue eyes, tan skin, and of course he was really into hip hop, right? So he wasn't really living his indigenous life, but it probably was pretty stricken from him in that life. Him and his brother both lived in Buffalo, and they both were into hip hop. But he was a Mohawk, and he was one of my first people who I just, I'm down with. He's one of my best friends, man. We played football for 4 years together. He's my homie, rock for him all day. And that was one of my first, right? And then I spent time in Minnesota when I went to the Vikings and got, met some high officials in the Minnewacanton tribe out there, the Crooks family and things of that nature. And they had a pretty good system out there on their territory. They were able to build a small casino, which was called a small TP at first, that bubbled in about 3 or 4 years into a multi-billion-dollar casino industry. They were able to then spread the wealth to the Minnewacanton and build amazing places. At first, it didn't go very well. Why? Because they were just putting in $36,000 into every Minnewacanton person with the certain blood. They were able to give them that money from the age of from the time they were born, and then when they turned 18, they were getting access to that money. Well, without financial stability and guidance, I even know about that. Money can make you, turn to a person that you're not, and also put you in some danger. And so at one point, there was a drug problem, in the Minnewacanton. So finally, they paid some more rules to make it adjust. Like you have to graduate high school, you have to educate yourself, you have to do certain things, and they kept the money inside that community. And now it's just it's probably one of the most modern territories I've ever been in my life, and that was 2007. And so I can imagine how it is now, 16 years later, right? So, but what I've heard from people that I still talk to, they have their own banks and mortgages and schools and real estate. Like they just have tons of programs that are going to help out their community. So it's a great thing. But in the same time, about 150 miles, 200 miles away is Standing Rock and over there in South Dakota with the pipeline going right through the property, the not property but the land of plenty of tribes down there, right? So it was just a thing where it's just so much going on with the Indigenous and the battle that, to me, solidarity and more than just acknowledgement. I think this is what I can't stand about society, government, Trudeau. I would say I would go to Trudeau and just say fuck you to your face, and I would love to tell you why, and I would love for you to give me something that wasn't harshly bullshit. I can't stand seeing him talk. I can't stand seeing him I just look at a person who's like a devilish, when a person, or even demonic, or we call these people beasts, when they literally just look in your face and tell you they're going to do something and then totally do the opposite right in front of your face and then make you feel like, why are you surprised that I did that? That's Trudeau. And the fakeness and the come to a territory and acknowledge you don't care. You don't give a damn about Indigenous people, and you never have. And I'm talking about also too, in my Babylonian situation in the United States, there is no real call to solidarity. There is no education that needs to be pushed. You understand? I am from Western New York. That is Iroquois all day, every day. Let me tell you some of the towns that were surrounded. And if you're not familiar with Buffalo, here's some of the towns that are around the area. You tell me what kind of land this is, right? So you start off with Niagara, okay? Do your research on that name also. But then there's towns like Cheektowaga, West Seneca, okay? Salamanca, obviously, Iroquois. You know what I mean? Like, where am I at? I'm on native land. Buffalo. How about that? You know what I mean? Things of these natures, we were always on native land. I can keep on going. There's so much more small towns and streets that are clearly indigenous origin, but it is taken over by Babylonians and people who live there, right? And I do like the fact that the new generation, though, I've seen in the University of Buffalo and Buff State in the education and the younger students, they have spoken out and made it clear. They even said that even at any event, there is a land acknowledgement. And of course, with our Buffalo Bandits winning the championship, that's a huge Indigenous community that's involved in that also. So that's also nice too. And things are going very well in the education part of it, but it needs to have a militancy and a assertiveness to it, because of the fact that they need help as far as solidarity. okay, and numbers. One. Number two, we also have to know that there are some fake indigenous people who are indigenous. Listen, I'm black. I know there are black people who don't give a damn about black people. Let me say that one more time. There's people who are black who you can sit there and look at them dead in their face and they know that they are about the money. They don't really care. And I guess these are the ones where if you take it old school wise, as far as black, we call them, I'm going to be real front with the language here. Excuse me for saying this because I know how I get down to the N-word, but these are the niggas that are in the house. You understand? The guys that are in the house think they're better. And this is the same thing that's going on with the indigenous communities. There are some indigenous people who think that the struggle is over because they have made some money and they just, maybe they're on council and then they in turn kind of like enslave their own people. Not by enslaving is like making someone do something for free, but taking the money that's supposed to be funded to some people and funding it to their pockets or funding it to specific people or things of that. I mean, I have yet to meet and sit down with an indigenous person who's like, yeah, our council isn't corrupt. So there's some internal problems that to me have to be handled by the indigenous. Let me say that one more time. There's so many people, I think, especially like Babylonians, you guys want to like come around and just like, well, how can we help? How can we? And you want to like go on the land. No, these are different type of things. These are internal things. There's a longevity. Sometimes it's family. Sometimes it's, you know what I mean? Cousins versus cousins. And it's a long trail of pain and suffering that they have to heal from. And as far as the history, this is why this is why it's so important that this should have been a federal holiday, and it's so important that the news, as far as what is continuing to happen in our indigenous communities, it needs to be blasted all over. I don't think you understand. Women are still missing. Okay, I don't really understand how RBC, Royal Bank Canada, how are you? It's very odd to see you at. I remember when I was in Auschwitz last year. It's very odd to see you at Auschwitz at the powwow when you're currently funding a pipeline that is going right through territory, and you refuse to change your route just because you don't really care. You fight, you bring police, you raid, you injure, you against protesters when it's their land. It's not like something that's just like, well, we're just claiming. No, you're coming right through territory, and you are ruining the ecosystem. You are ruining people's lives. And we all know that people, even let's say in Oneida, they have a landfill sitting right across, not too far from territory, which in turn brings in, rats and all type of other things to their water systems. They still don't have fresh water out in Titanega. I think they're still under a boiling warning. Ganawagi, Ganasadagi, some of these places are wild, wild west, taken over by Babylonians who take advantage of people who just need some money. So they take over their property and pretty much have a trap house and then not give anything back. That's how I stand on it. To me, that's just fully bullshit. I worked out in Ghana. I worked out in Ganawaki. I was in playground head security for about 15 other natives who were Mohawk, and the respect that I gained from them, the respect that I learned from them, guys like councilmen like Shane Jacobs, councilmen like that are all like frontline guys who I learned and sat down and had conversations with. To people that I mentioned, like I call my Aunt Lynn over there, one of the workers I had, and she was just one of these, traditional natives who just was, very, very, very nice and very, not just a person who just, they call me Theo out there in Ghana, in Ganawagi, I'm sorry. And shout out to my cousin Kiefer. These people are my cousins, my cousin Hell. I got a bunch of people. I got to stop naming because I'm going to miss people. But you know who I'm talking about. My whole crew out there in Ganawaki. And, all those guys I work with, I miss y'all for one. I'm kind of getting emotional a little bit because I miss y'all because y'all know how we get down. We were on the front line, and they stood right up during George Floyd. They were already in their struggle for solidarity, fighting this pipeline in George Floyd, and Black Lives Matter happened. They stepped right in, and I remember them spray painting Black Lives Matter. This is for Treasy. Like, crazy. I couldn't even understand it, and shout out to like I said, my cousin Keith. That's my cousin. You know what I mean? We walked around the territory, pick up some backwoods and shit. And he would come with me sometimes. I'm walking there. I'm like, yo, that's my cousin. You don't see the resemblance. And they would sit there and laugh. But to keep it G, to keep it 100% honest, you never know. I think that some of us probably are, do have Native background or vice versa with that unity. So my genuine love for my Indigenous doesn't just go from like, we going to sidestep on the business part, because I'm going to call out a couple people. I'm not going to call you by name, but you know who you are. You don't give a damn about Indigenous people until it's time to move some packs and move some material. You don't care. You don't say one thing, or you say it just because you know. But there's people who I know, who know who you are. Shout out to my man Herb. Like, these guys, like, naturally have an Indigenous love and naturally do the healings and naturally do the education and read books and have a genuine love. And there's some people who it's just because you're on territory, now you're showing love. But when it comes to that frontline shit, you're nowhere to be found on any subject. And I'm tired of y'all. I really am. And I've watched y'all for many years do this process. Show up for a cup, but say nothing when it's time to like stand up and show solidarity, or even just repost something that is an atrocity, a missing person, a purpose, a program. You know what I mean? You don't give a fuck. So don't be coming on Happy Indigenous Day. Don't say nothing because you never said nothing before. You don't put no damn work in. And the people who really, and this goes for all communities. Listen, I'm Black. I have people who are Black who don't put the work in for me either. And I call them out the same way. But I also know some Indigenous people. I ain't gonna name you by name, but you know who you are. You know if I see you, I'll smack the shit out of you. You out there in Ganawaki, and I got people right now who know where you live who will smack the shit out of you. And you're a Mohawk and you're a skinny dude, and you walk around, and when it was time for you to protest one time, you were too drunk in your house. And then come to find out when I do the research, you ain't never out there. Never. Because I know the people who actually are. So there's people who jump in front, and then they play your Indigenous card to make it use as a difference, almost narcissistic. But when they never comes down to banging, you're just talking. You're not giving programs. You're not trying to, submit. I've submitted for offers to my owners of the casino to ensure that the school up the street can get some funding for their school bus, because they need their school bus. I'm not going to talk about everything else I fucking do, but it is not because, I'm getting anything back. This is the role. We on Turtle Island, yo. None of this land was ever ours. And as a matter of fact, you should read your history, because the very first people who got enslaved were the Native. Understand that. They came over and started enslaving the Native after they punished them and killed them and took their spirit and took everything. They got them too sick to work. Then they started going into the combination of literally indentured, broke white people or Irish people, whatever, combined with the slaves that they started importing, which in turn had to be justified. That's a whole nother subject. This is about Indigenous. And you killed, you punished, you tried to wipe out the history. You still try to wipe out the history. You act as if what you gave the territories was just enough for them to prominently live, but for a fact you give nothing. You give no type of help for real. You give no type of solidarity as far as like, hey, they don't have water out there. Well, that's bullshit, because everybody who's on this entire province should get great free water or clean water. So let's fix that right now. Instead of taking 20 years to fix a pothole down at Eglinton. You understand how this goes? They'll put tons of money into these things, but the people who are on the land, they won't go out to fucking Picton. There's like 22,000 acres that is supposed to be on, Titanega, but it's just, oops, sorry, made a mistake. We gave you 55,000 when you were supposed to owe 97,000 or something like that. These are the things that are still there, and you have to fight. And even though they might not fight, because they're going through things, you have to call out for the people who do, because there's people in turn, that are fighting every day. Shout out to my boys out in Titanega too. You know who you are, man. My man Andrew Brand, frontliners. You know what I'm saying? I don't care. The frontline people. And wake up every fucking day to do this. Not put on the whole indigenous when it's convenient. No, this is who they are and this is how they bang. And there's tons of people. Shout out to my another territory, Titanega. I got so much family out there. So much. And then as far as Oneida out here, shout out to Oneida and shout out to even Salamanca, man. I got love on territory. And I will continue to bang until I go on to that next life. Because again, we're on Turtle Island. And if you actually wanted to heal this land and know, if the government wanted to know how to make this land better, you should have been talking to the native from the get-go. You should have made them head of any kind of landscaping whatsoever. Because they would tell you where to go. They would tell you how to move. They would tell you even how to heal. You understand? People wanting going sick and being sick and vibe. You're probably, this hasn't changed. You're all of us, no matter where you're born, you're indigenous, your bloodline will still, tell you how you're moving. And if your bloodline is just from here and you've always been here, and by beside that is Africa, but you have a long history here in North America because it was your land, then maybe we should be listening to you instead of listening to all these other fuckers who came over here 200 years, 300 years ago. So I love my indigenous people. And I love my native cousin, I call them. That's my native cousins, man, Mohawks, Jabwe, anybody really. I'm gonna miss some Métis, and I'm gonna miss a bunch of tribes, but the whole Iroquois Confederacy, bang that. That's my town. That's my area. East Coast, New York, upstate, Western New York, into Canada, into Ontario, even into Quebec. Mohawk all day. Mohawk all day. Those are my people, man. I don't care. I met so many, and they rock for me. Asquith out there. Like, I can name it, man. I can name it. And so I wanted to just love and shout out to my indigenous people. And I will bang no matter where I'm at. I will always have a Mohawk flag hanging around because those are my people. It's my cousins, man. You know what I mean? Those are my cousins for real. I don't think you understand. If I call a few of them, they coming. And they call me, I'm coming also. I'm right there. Pull up wherever. So Justin Trudeau, get your head out of your fucking ass and make it a federal holiday. And stop faking like you actually give a damn about indigenous people. Straight up. And if you faking too, just know that you're dealing with some serious ancestry karma. You know who I'm talking to, too. You can never be indigenous, no matter if you go to your territory, you don't even know where you're at. It's not even your territory. You go to a place where you used to fucking run and hide when you were 12 to 16. I found the truth about you. And then you're still white as snow, and then you go teach seven grandfather teachings, and you're teaching them the wrong way. Your day will come. And it's not going to be just how you think it is. I understand. Trust me, I've talked to many people on your territory. So I'm here to weed out also the fakes, too, because I weed out the fakes of mine. Happy Indigenous Day to my real indigenous people. And those who rock for indigenous, for real. Shout out to y'all too, because you know who you are too. I love all y'all. But I'm gonna tell you something. On a black angry level, it needs to be more recognition. And just come by and kumbaya bullshit. We just need to talk. Start talking numbers. Start financing these territories with the proper equipment and fucking materials. Don't say, they didn't want to help. Bullshit. Bullshit. Give them back the land that they're owed. And stay the fuck off of it with your pipeline and bullshit. Straight up. Love y'all.